What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing my ranking of all of R.L. Stine's point horror books. Yes, I have finally read through all of his point horror books over the last couple of years, or last few years now. And the point horror series is quite a large series. It's been going on for a long time, all the way from the late 80s, I want to say, up until the late 90s. And it has many different authors contributing to this series. I've read quite a few of the other non-R.L. Stine ones, but today I'm just doing a ranking of all of R.L. Stine's books that he wrote for this series. He wrote a total of 18 books in the Point Horror series. As per usual with these types of rankings, we're going to be going from worst to best. And let's just jump right into it. So I have them divided up into categories here. I've got my notes down here. The first three books I'm going to be talking about are the only ones that I consider truly bad books. So yeah, there's only three books in the series I would consider bad. Then the next category is kind of just like meh, slightly below average, not that great. I have a few books, unfortunately, quite a few in that category. Then the next category I would consider fine, good, like decent books. There's a handful in that category. And then the fourth category is very good / great. And I have like just my top few in that one. So yeah, let's jump into it. This ranking is probably not going to be real long, and I'm probably not going to go into a lot of detail with these books for the sole reason of me not remembering a lot of the details about them. A lot of these books just kind of blend together for me, and some of them, even some of the ones I read recently, I'm already forgetting, like they're just leaving my memory. So yeah, but let's just jump right into it. So starting off at the bottom, my least favorite point horror book. Can you guys guess what it is? So my least favorite point horror book is one that is part of a like sub-series within the series, I guess. And it is a sequel. And this is The Babysitter 2. This book, I did not like at all. I borderline hated this book. I gave it, I think, like a 1.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I don't remember anything about this book at all that I enjoyed. And the main thing that really brought it down for me was the twist ending and the big reveal of who the villain was. So essentially, this follows upon the story of the first Babysitter book. I think Jenny gets a new babysitting job. She's also seeing her therapist because she's suffering some trauma or some PTSD based on the events that happened to her in the first book. And then she starts getting more threatening phone calls. Basically, the events of the first book begin to repeat. So it's basically like just a rinse and repeat of the first one. And there is a new villain this time. And when we get to the end, I wasn't enjoying this book at all. But what really put the cherry on top of this book just being pure crap, in my opinion, is when we get to the like climax of the story and the big reveal and the twist of who the villain was making these threatening phone calls, saying they're going to come to get Jenny and all of this stuff. The reveal is just the most idiotic thing I've ever read in my entire life. I hated the twist to this. I hated the villain reveal. Their motives, the villain's motives, the reasons for going after Jenny, it's so stupid. I hated it. So yeah, after reading this book, I was like extremely nervous to go into reading the other two Babysitter sequels. Yes, there is a Babysitter 3 and 4. But I'll talk more about those when we get to those ones. But yeah, this is by far the worst point horror book in my opinion. I hate The Babysitter 2. This book sucks. Okay, moving on to book number 17. This one isn't much better. These first three books are all in the bad category. We have Call Waiting. Now, Call Waiting, this is one of the trashiest books in the series, honestly. This book is just... So the entire plot of this book, we have a main character. Her name is Karen. And I think she's going on a date with her boyfriend, or she's supposed to go on a date with him. And he's supposed to call her, and he never calls her. And from there, it's a lot of Karen just being a Karen. She's worried about her boyfriend. She's suspicious of him. She's wondering why he doesn't call her. Pretty much the entire plot of this book revolves around Karen being like really clingy to her boyfriend, wondering what's going on with him. Why is he being distant? Why is he not calling me? Why isn't he going out with me? He doesn't seem like he's talking to me as much. Is he cheating on me? That's pretty much the entire plot of this book, I swear to God. This book has the worst protagonist I've ever read in an R.L. Stine book in my entire life. Her name is entirely fitting to her personality and her character. I know that whole Karen thing wasn't, a thing back in the 90s, but yeah, it's very fitting to how her character is in today's day and age. This book was just not good at all. I will admit, I did get just a little bit of enjoyment out of this book just for how bad and how trashy it was, if that makes sense. Like, I just was kind of like laughing at the book for just how silly and just kind of stupid it was. But yeah, other than that, I did not really care for this book at all. It just gets stupider and more. Karen gets even more annoying as the book progresses, if that's even possible. And yeah, nothing happens in this book except Karen being a clingy girlfriend and wondering what her boyfriend is doing. So yeah, that's Call Waiting in a nutshell. Comes in at number 17. I also gave this one like a 1.5 out of 5 stars. So yeah. Okay, moving on to number 16. And this is the last book that I have in the bad category, fortunately. And that is Twisted. I think I also gave this one a 1.5, but in hindsight, this one is quite a bit better than the previous two. So I'd probably bump it up to like a low 2 stars. I probably could just give this one a flat 2 stars. I didn't really care for this book all that much, to be honest. But it's a little bit better than the previous two. It's basically about this girl that joins this for sorority house, I think, or something. Tri Gamma sorority campus. And then they do some crazy prank or some kind of initiation type thing where they have to go and like steal from the store. And that's about all I remember from it. So yeah, a lot of these ones I'm going to be talking about coming up here, I don't really remember all that well, which I guess speaks to the fact that they just weren't that great, weren't really that memorable. And this kind of is one of them. So yeah, Twisted comes in at number 16. Probably like a flat 2 stars for this one. Okay, moving on to the category of the books being like kind of just meh, below average, not quite terrible, but not that good either. So coming in at number 15, we have Beach Party. This is another one I don't really remember a whole lot about. I know I was excited to read this after reading Beach House. I didn't know if they were really connected or anything, or if it's just similar titles, and that's the case. The books just kind of have similar titles. They're both set in summertime, but they could not possibly be any more different than they are. This is no connection to Beach House whatsoever. And this book was kind of a disappointment. It wasn't terrible, but it's just one of those really generic, formulaic type ones that just doesn't feel very original, just doesn't really have a lot going for it. Out of all the point horror books, this one reminds me the most of a Fear Street book. This one really feels Fear Street. It basically just kind of relies upon that classic or more traditional like murder mystery. There's the mystery of who the killer is. You do get like some of the teen melodrama in this. You get the summer vibes. Not a terrible book, just very generic and formulaic. So yeah, Beach Party comes in at number 15. Probably a 2 out of 5 stars for this one. Okay, coming in at number 14, we have The Snowman. Now, this is one that I was super disappointed when I first read it because I thought it was going to be like some supernatural story about a killer snowman. I mean, obviously, you have a snowman on the cover. You got the tagline right here, a cold-blooded killer. And the title of the book is The Snowman. But it has nothing to do with snowmen or a snowman whatsoever. The snowman that this book is referring to is a teenager who is an albino. Yes, that is what the book is referring to. And this book wasn't, it wasn't terrible. I think I was mostly just disappointed in it because it's not what I was expecting. And it's basically about this main character, I don't even remember her name, Heather, and she meets this guy who's an albino, and I think she kind of like falls in love with him. They start like going out, but he's a very like strange, kind of mysterious kid. She lives with her aunt and uncle who are very cruel, or I think more so her uncle. And it's just kind of like a relationship drama a little bit, and a little bit of a thriller as she kind of discovers or learns that this albino kid isn't all that he appears to be. And yeah, that's pretty much all I remember about this one. Again, not a bad book. It's just not what I was hoping it was going to be, not what I expected. Probably like a 2.5, not quite 2.5, maybe like a 2.25 for this one. So yeah, that's The Snowman coming in at number 14. Okay. Coming in at number 13, and a few of these that I'm talking about here are kind of interchangeable, to be honest. I had a really hard time deciding where to place these books in my ranking. A lot of these ones I'm talking about right now just kind of blend together for me, so I'm not going to mention the ratings on these next couple because they're all pretty much the same, like between the 2 to 2.5 star range. So yeah, coming in at number 13, we have Blind Date. Now this, I'm sure many of you already know, but this is R.L. Stine's very first point horror book and also his very first young adult horror book that he ever read. And it kind of shows. This book is really, really cheesy. It definitely is not the most well written. I think R.L. Stine got a lot better at writing as he went along. But there was still something about this one that was just slightly enjoyable. I think because of the fact that it was so cheesy. This one is a little bit trashy, kind of like Call Waiting. Not quite as bad as that book in terms of like the plot and the characters and such. But I don't know. This one was not great. You can tell it was R.L. Stine's first book, but yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about it. So Blind Date comes in at number 13. Another one that just kind of left my memory over time. All right, coming in at number 12, we have The Boyfriend. Now, this is one that I just read somewhat recently. I think this was within like the last 4 or 5 point horror books that I had to read. And I already forget this one. This book has already left my memory. Let me kind of glance at the back here to see if it can like trigger the memories back of what this book is even about. I don't even know. So yeah, this book obviously wasn't that great or memorable. I'm putting it at number 12 on my ranking. Honestly, I feel like I probably could have put it lower. I feel like I remember The Snowman better than this one. That one I read much longer ago. I probably should have put this one a little bit lower on my ranking, but yeah. That's The Boyfriend. This one also gets like a 2 stars or a little over 2 stars. Comes in at number 12. Don't have much to say about that one. Okay. Let's see. We've got 2 more left in this category. So we also have Hit and Run coming in at number 11. And this book is kind of a ripoff of I Know What You Did Last Summer, a little bit. So it's basically about these teenagers that go out for a little night drive. They're not supposed to. They don't have their licenses yet. And they hit a guy. They kill him, kind of. They're not really sure. They think he's dead. But, he's not really. Somebody starts to stalk these teenagers. They give them like notes and stuff saying, like, I know what you did. It's implied that the person that they killed might be coming back from the dead to get revenge. Yeah, it's kind of like a ripoff of I Know What You Did Last Summer. And it was just okay, I guess. It wasn't really that great. Like another 2-star book. So yeah, Hit and Run comes at number 11. Again, I don't really have a lot to say about these early ones because I just really don't feel like they're worth talking about that much. And I don't remember them all that well. So coming in at number 10, thankfully, this is the last one in this category. After this next book, the rest of these will be pretty solid for the most part. So, this is the last one in this category, The Dead Girlfriend, coming in at number 10 on my ranking. Again, we have another one I barely remember. I did read this one a while back. This isn't one I read too recently, in my defense. Well, let me see. What does the back say? Is his girlfriend back from the dead? Annie just met Jonathan. She doesn't know about his last girlfriend, doesn't know how beautiful she was, doesn't know how popular, doesn't know how she died. But Annie is about to find out because Jonathan's old girlfriend might be dead, but she isn't gone. Okay, I remember this one a little bit, but not that much. And yeah, it's just another one that I don't think was that great. Honestly, these last several books that I've talked about are probably going to just fade from memory and ones I'll never reread again. And I just, don't really care about all that much. So yeah, this one, again, probably a little over 2 stars, coming in at number 10. This is The Dead Girlfriend, guys. All right, now that we got those out of the way, the rest of these are good. All right, these are all books that I enjoyed to varying degrees. I didn't love all of these, but we're moving on to some better books now. So, coming in at number 9, we have The Babysitter 3. And this one, let's see, what did I give this one? I think I gave this one like a 2.75 out of 5, so just shy of 3 stars. And I was nervous going into these other Babysitter sequels. I fully expected to be in for like pure torture after suffering through the second Babysitter book. But I was really, really shocked to discover that The Babysitter 3 was actually pretty good. I feel like this is a very worthy sequel to the first Babysitter. I feel like you can ignore Babysitter 2 if you really wanted to. Just don't read that book and just go from Babysitter 1 to this one here. I feel like it makes perfect and complete sense if you skip the second one and just go from 1 to 3, honestly. The second Babysitter book was absolute garbage, in my opinion. But 3 is not bad. So in the third Babysitter book, Jenny is still kind of suffering from PTSD a little bit from the events of the first book. She's scared easily. She has like a big imagination. She's easily spooked. She's just suffering from some PTSD. She's having a hard time like getting over this, which is understandable. What she went through in the first book was pretty terrifying. And her mother sends her away to go visit her cousin and her aunt on like this little vacation thing. And basically this book kind of has like 2 main characters to it. So when she goes on vacation, we start getting perspective changes from her to her cousin. So her cousin is also kind of like a main character in this. And I kind of like this about the book. It gave it kind of like this more unique spin on it, I guess. Jenny is just not the only character we really follow in here. And then Jenny's cousin, she starts babysitting. She takes up like this part-time babysitting job. And she starts receiving threatening phone calls. And the phone calls, the voice on the phone are claiming that Mr. Hagen is back, which was the villain of the first book, that he's coming back from the grave to seek revenge. And she tells Jenny about it, and then Jenny is freaked out and scared. So yeah, somebody's coming after Jenny's cousin now, and both of these girls are now like terrified. And then we get to the big twist and big reveal of who the villain is. Obviously, Mr. Hagen is dead in the first book, so it couldn't be him. And I didn't really mind the twist to this. I think some people might not like the big reveal of who the villain or the culprit was in this. And I could understand it. It's hard to talk about without spoiling anything. It's really difficult. So I really won't say anything further. But I kind of liked it. It wasn't bad. Yeah, this book I probably could just round it up to like a flat 3 out of 5 stars. This really surprised me. Definitely light years ahead of Babysitter 2 in terms of quality, in my opinion. Nothing fantastic, but I enjoyed it for the most part. And yeah, that's The Babysitter 3. Comes in at number 9. I was surprised to enjoy this after, getting the dumpster fire that was the second one. Okay, moving on to number 8, we have I Saw You That Night. I absolutely love the cover to this one. This might be my favorite point horror cover, or one of them. Not quite my top favorite, but this is one of my favorite covers. And I love like this. I like the color scheme, like the pink and the blue and like the font of the title and everything. Then on the back we have a tagline: "This summer's going to be a real killer." So yeah, I Saw You That Night. This book is basically about a girl who, and this is one that I read a long time ago. This was one of the earliest point horror books that I read. I think I read this a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year. I don't remember. And I still remember it fairly well, which I feel like says something over a lot of those other ones that I read. So it's basically about this girl that goes into this house. She is accidentally a witness to a murder, and then she starts receiving threatening messages and phone calls. That seems to be a trend in a lot of these books, guys. There's always mysterious, threatening phone calls with the husky voice on the other end of the phone, and letters mysteriously showing up at their doorstep. Yeah, that's like a common trend in these books. If you've read these, you already know. But yeah, she's a witness to this murder. She starts getting that usual string of threats and blackmail. Somebody's coming after her because she was a witness. And this one was really just kind of campy and cheesy, but in a very fun, in a very entertaining way. This book to me is really reminiscent of like just a cheesy 80s like slasher movie. That's what this one really reminded me of. This was just kind of a funny book, just kind of a light read. But we do get some violence in this. At the end, at like the climax of the book, there's a pretty violent scene in this that came out of nowhere. And I remember when I was reading this, I was like, holy crap, like this isn't a young adult point horror book. R.L. Stine wrote this. This one gets pretty crazy and violent at the end. So yeah, I Saw You That Night. Probably a flat 3 out of 5 stars for this one as well. The only reason I didn't rate it higher, it's about on the same level as Babysitter 3, is because it is kind of cheesy. You can't really take it too seriously. So yeah, I Saw You That Night comes in at number 8. Okay. Coming in at number 7, we have the very first Babysitter book. This one is also like a 3 out of 5 stars. And this is one that I think is probably the most popular point horror book from what I've seen, or at least one of the most popular. And it obviously R.L. Stine really liked it, and it must have sold well because he wrote 3 sequels to it. But for whatever reason, it's just not quite one of my top favorites. I enjoyed it for what it is. For those of you who don't know, the original Babysitter book, Jenny, she goes to babysit for this kid. She starts receiving threatening phone calls, of course, saying that somebody's coming for her. Are you all alone in the house? I'm coming to get you. Just, cheesy threats like that. And this one does have a really good twist to it. This one does get pretty crazy at the end. The reveal of who the stalker is kind of terrifying, honestly. So yeah, not a bad book. I guess I can see why it's popular. It's just, to me, I didn't really love it all that much. Just like a flat 3 out of 5 stars. It's just fine, decent. So yeah, first Babysitter book comes in at number 7. Okay. Coming in at number 6, we have The Hitchhiker. This one, this is actually one of the last ones I read. I think within like the last 3 point horror books that I was reading for this. And when I was like halfway through this book, I was loving this. And I expected this to be like possibly in my top placement, like within the top 5 or something. Unfortunately, this one does start to kind of go downhill a little bit, sort of taper off towards the end. I wasn't really a big fan of the climax of this story. The ending was really cheesy. But there are certain aspects to this one that I really, really love, which is why it made it so high up on the list. It's basically about these 2 teenage girls that are on vacation. I think it's like spring break or something down in Florida. They're partying, and they pick up this teenage guy on their way back, a hitchhiker. And, they're like he's like really good looking and handsome. And they're like joking about it at first and like talking to him, flirting with them, that kind of thing. And then, of course, they learn that this hitchhiker might not be all that he appears to be. There's some news bulletin things, or when they're on the radio, they're hearing news people announce that there was like a murder. And it's sort of implied to be tied to this hitchhiker guy. So there's kind of some lingering suspense going on who this guy is exactly. And he also has a really bad temper. There's a couple times he like explodes and just does and says some kind of things that put the girls on edge. But for some reason they kind of stick with him, or they keep him going along with their, trip back home or whatever. And yeah, when we get to like the big climax of the story, there's this big twist. The story takes like a huge 180. It's not at all what you expect. And I didn't mind the reveal all that much, but it's what happens after the big reveal and twist that I didn't really care for, how things play out at the climax, the resolution. And yeah, I don't know. The Hitchhiker comes in at number 6. It had some things about it that I really, really liked, but it also just kind of tanked at the end for me. R.L. Stine kind of has a bad habit of like fumbling the endings to a lot of these books, really brings it down. And this one is definitely a case of that, in my opinion. So yeah, The Hitchhiker, probably like a 3.25 out of 5. Comes in at number 6. Okay. Next up, coming in at number 5, we have The Girlfriend. This one is actually also one of the last ones. I think this was a second to the last one that I read for all of my point horror books. And I really enjoyed this one. This one was another big surprise. I figured, after reading The Boyfriend, I figured this one was going to be something similar. Not really that great, but I was dead wrong. This book I actually really, really enjoyed. So it's basically about this teenager. I think his name is Scotty. Yep, Scotty. He has the perfect life and the perfect girlfriend. But one weekend while she's away, Scotty goes just a little astray. Suddenly he has a new girlfriend, one who won't go away. His one wild night has become a nightmare because his new girlfriend has decided that she loves Scotty to death. So yeah, basically what happens is Scotty's girlfriend, she goes on vacation to London, I think, or someplace in Europe. And while she's gone for a week, he just happens to stumble across this girl who has like a flat tire or something on her bike. And he decides to give her a ride in the car. And the next thing you know, they're at a diner eating lunch together. He gives her a ride home and they're making out on like her front doorstep. So yeah, things kind of get out of hand a little bit. Scotty sort of cheats on his girlfriend. Not exactly cheats on her. I don't know. They just end up like kissing a couple of times, I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book because this girl, after he like ditches her, he feels guilty about what he did. He realized he made a mistake. But then this girl starts calling him and won't leave him alone. And this girl is just like psycho, like absolutely crazy. She's being like super clingy. She keeps meeting him in school. She's like obsessed with him. She wants to meet his parents. She wants to meet his younger brother. She like wants to marry this guy after they went out one time on like barely even a date. And yeah. And Scotty, it kind of like lies to his family and friends a little bit about never having met this girl before, never having seen her because he feels guilty about it. And you do feel a little bit of sympathy for Scott, I think, because he's not a bad character, except for the fact he is kind of dumb. He is an idiot for having gone out with this girl and having helped her in the first place. And he's even more of an idiot for lying about it because that gets him into like knee-deep crap. Like, it makes the situation a lot worse for him. If he would have just confessed, this whole thing would have been done and over with. Not a big deal. But his girlfriend comes back from vacation. He's kind of distant from his girlfriend because of what's going on with him and this new girl. He's like trying to keep her at bay, trying to tell her like, it's over. I can't see you anymore. But she's basically blackmailing him, telling him that if they don't go out together, then she's going to tell everyone that he knows. So it's a really lot of teen melodrama. It might not sound good on paper, but it's one that for whatever reason, I just really enjoyed. I don't know why. This one is really heavy with the teen melodrama, but I was very entertained by it for whatever reason. I was invested in the story. I felt a little bit of sympathy for Scott, even though he's kind of a dumbass. And yeah, I don't know. I like this book. This one gets like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And also, one thing I want to mention is this girl, when I said she's psycho, I am not kidding. There's some messed up things that happen in this book. There's some animal deaths in this book. This girl does some pretty crazy things. It's not just her being clingy and threatening to blackmail him. She does some pretty messed up things. So this book does have a little bit of violence and suspense to it as well. So yeah, that's The Girlfriend. And this one, what is this again? It comes in at number 5. I really enjoyed this book. Like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So yeah. Okay, now we are moving on to the very good / great. These are the last 4 books in the Point Horror series. And coming in at number 4, we have The Babysitter 4. You guys might be a little bit surprised to see this one way up on the list. And I will tell you that I'm just as surprised as you are. Now, like I said with The Babysitter 3, I was not expecting to enjoy the sequels all that much. After the second book, I fully expected the second and the third one to not be very good either. But I was dead wrong. This 4th Babysitter book was awesome. I didn't quite love it, but it was very, very entertaining. It kind of broke the mold a little bit of the other Babysitter books. It broke that formula of just, Jenny getting the threatening phone calls. It was something a little bit different, a little bit more unique. So in The Babysitter 4, it basically continues off of the 3rd book. I guess minor spoilers ahead. It's kind of hard to talk about this one without mentioning events in the third book. So one thing too, just on a side note, skip Babysitter 2. You can read 3 and 4 as the true sequels. 2 doesn't even need to be there, but 3 and 4 like are perfect sequels to this book. So yeah, Babysitter 4, Jenny gets out of the mental hospital. She's doing good. She's doing a lot better. She's not seeing things or hearing things anymore. She's kind of over like her trauma from the events of the first book. She's, kind of gotten a hold of her PTSD, I guess. And she ends up taking another babysitter job. So there's that. I guess it does follow the formula a little bit. But instead of getting threatening phone calls, something else is going on. So the kids that she's babysitting tell her that their house is haunted. And she starts experiencing some very strange phenomenon. There are times where she's babysitting and she feels like there's just this presence in the room. She just feels like there's this cold hand like touching her or like grabbing the back of her neck. There's just all of these really creepy scenes of just weird things going on in this house where she's babysitting these kids. And I will tell you straight up that this book actually creeped me out a little bit, and that really shocked me. I was not expecting that at all. This is essentially a haunted house story. I did not know that going into it, but I really, really enjoyed it for that reason. It kind of a basic haunted house story, I'll admit, but I really, really dug it for that reason. And there is the question, like the mystery, is Jenny cracking up again? Or is this house she's babysitting these kids in, is it really haunted? But I feel like it's kind of implied throughout the story that it actually is haunted and Jenny's not going crazy again. She's really evolved as a character. She has a really nice character arc throughout these 3 books. And you get the sense that she's grown a lot in this 4th one, and she's not as easily scared as she used to be. And there's a lot of scenes in here where instead of freaking out and, being easily scared and running away, she actually goes to investigate this haunted house. She wants to know what's going on. She's determined to find out what's happening. She knows that she's not crazy and not just hallucinating like she was in the previous book. So yeah, I feel like it's pretty implied that, this house actually is haunted. She's not just, losing her mind again. And like I said, this book has some pretty creepy scenes in it. I was creeped out a couple of times. There's a lot of weird things going on with this house. And I'm really not going into too much more detail with the plot because I don't want to give anything away. I really think you should read the first 3 babysitter books yourself to see. But this one was a big surprise. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. This gets a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars, almost more like a 3.75 out of 5 to be honest. This is really not a babysitter book. It's like a haunted house story. But it still follows upon the babysitter story arc, Jenny's story arc. It's a very worthy sequel in my opinion. And yeah, Babysitter 4 comes in at number 4 on my ranking. How poetic. Okay, we are on to the top 3. And coming in at number 3, we have the first Halloween Night book. Now, I've been talking to some of my friends in the Discord server about this book, and I've seen like other people's reviews for this book online on YouTube reviews and such. And apparently I'm the only person in the world that really likes this first Halloween book. I don't know why. This one is a lot of teen melodrama, I will admit. And it's very mean-spirited, which I think is one of the things I actually like about it. It's almost kind of like a coming-of-age story in a way. It's just a lot of like mean teen drama. But I don't know. There's just something I like about it. It's got the Halloween vibes. There's a Halloween party at the end, and things get pretty crazy. I will admit it's not the perfect book. This one does have kind of a bad case of a fumbled ending a little bit. We get like multiple twists at the end of this book. Some of them work, some of them don't. But overall, this was just a really entertaining book. I really enjoyed it. This one also gets like a 3.75 out of 5, kind of tied with Babysitter 4. But yeah, the first Halloween Night book, I have a full review of this one up on my channel, an older review I did of this. But yeah, this one comes in at number 3 on my ranking. And then just barely above that, at number 2, we have Halloween Night 2. Now, I kind of put this book at the same rating as the first Halloween Night initially. But I decided to bump this one up just slightly. This one I'd probably give like a 4 out of 5 stars. Just because this one I think had a little bit more action in it. than the first book. It's a little bit more evenly paced, I think. There's just a little bit more going on. And I feel like this one has a little bit more of a satisfying climax and ending, whereas the first book, things got a little bit convoluted, a little bit confusing, just there was too much going on with it. This one, I think, is just a little bit more linear and more solid overall. So yeah, I decided to give a slight edge to Halloween Night 2. And like the first book, this one is just really fun. It is mean-spirited, so it's not going to be for everybody. A lot of the characters in here are just jerks. To me, I kind of like that vibe that it has where the teenagers are just sort of mean to one another. You know, there's pranks and stuff going on. To me, it makes it feel realistic. Makes it feel like a coming-of-age story. Kind of gives it that relatability factor. That's just my opinion. And yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed Halloween Night 2. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It comes in at number 2 on my ranking. All right. And my number 1 point horror book. I'm sure you guys have figured out what it is based on the ones I've already talked about. But yeah, this is my very favorite point horror book, and that is Beach House. And this is one that I think seems to be pretty popular from what I've noticed. I don't think I've met anybody that hasn't liked this book, at least from what I've seen. This book is awesome. So this is actually one of the earliest ones I read. I read this a couple years ago. And in hindsight, I initially actually gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But, you know, in relativity to the other books in this series that I've rated, I'm going to bump this one up to like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. There's not a lot about it that I didn't like. And this story is really cool because we are following 2 different timelines in here. So throughout this book, it will jump back and forth from the past to the present. And in the past, I think it takes place like the 50s or something. Let's see. Yeah, summer of 1956. The book is split up into parts. I think it's a 4-part book or part 6 or something. Yeah, part 6 this summer. And there was a string of murders, like a serial killer murdering these people in the past. And that's somehow tied to similar events that happen to be going on in the present. And this one, man, this book was just a ton of fun. Very creative. I feel like this one has the most ambitious plot line out of any of the books in this series. And it executes it very, very well, in my opinion. This one also does have some supernatural stuff going on. I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's a little bit of supernatural stuff going on here. And I think it's the only point horror book that does that. I'm trying to think. Remember, no, it's not the only. But it's one of like 2 or 3 point horror books that have supernatural stuff going on. It's not just a killer teen drama, although it does have that, but there's a little bit of a supernatural twist to it as well. And then the teen melodrama that we get in this book, there was something about it that was just very funny to me. I don't know. I remember actually laughing out loud a couple of times when I was reading this book. The romance and stuff in here is just real cheesy, just kind of funny in sort of like just a cheesy way. And this one also has the summer vibes to it. Just like great, I don't know how to explain it, just great summer vibes. R.L. Stine just really gives you a sense of that atmosphere and the weather and everything. There's a lot of good description in here. This was one that I got fully invested in. I don't get real sucked into books too often, but this was one that just sucked me in, pulled me into the story, and it wouldn't let go. And I absolutely loved it. The only thing that I think I didn't really like about it all that much, just a minor complaint from what I remember, is there is an aspect to the twist ending of this book during the climax, and part of it didn't really make a lot of sense. There was some missing logic there, kind of back up that twist. I don't even remember exactly what it was. It was just something small, just a very minor complaint. It wasn't really that big of a deal. So yeah, in hindsight, I decided to round this book up to a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Again, I'm kind of rating it compared to the other books in this series. This 4.5 star book isn't necessarily going to be the same as a 4.5 stars I would rate, to a book outside of this series. So yeah, but Beach House is without a doubt my very favorite point horror book. This book is, yeah, it's great. I really don't have any complaints with it. It's an awesome book, and it comes in at number 1 for me. So yeah, that is it, guys. That is my ranking of all of the point horror books. That was exhausting. And as I was doing this ranking, I was remembering why I don't like doing these, because I can never decide where to place these stupid books. A lot of them, especially kind of in the middle, they just sort of blend together for me. I could probably change them around a little bit on this list, and it wouldn't matter. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this series as a whole. Do you have a favorite point horror book, a least favorite? Let me know down in the comments what your favorites or least favorites are. That's all I have for today, guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.